Hi there, so this is your first video for your lessons on data analysis. So this is looking at things like charts and graphs and tables and different things like that and how we get information from them. So you can see at the side, as usual, it's split into level 2 and level 3, so it's very much up to you which one you want to do. They're pretty similar. The only difference in this one is it's a slightly harder scale in the third level one, but the overall skill is the same. So I'm going to go through roughly what is expected from you in your OneNotes, and then I will go over some examples of how to do the different skills for those of you who are a bit unsure. So first of all, what I will point out is there's consolidation work over here at the side. So if you're finding that you think you're really struggling with some graphs, there's some nice easy ones over here to practice and get started with. So I'm going to go through the second level stuff first. So your learning intention, which is actually the same for the third level, is that you're going to learn how to extract data from bar graphs and line graphs and explain what is being shown in this graph. So your success criteria, so basically what you should be able to do by the end of this, is you should be able to identify bar and line graphs and for what data they might be used. You should be able to extract information from bars and line graphs, and you should be able to come to conclusions based on the data extracted from graphs, which I'll touch on a wee bit more. So your tasks are highlighted down the side, so well done, you've already done task 1 because it was to watch this video. Task 2 is to go through the questions and answer them. You can either write them just in the side here, or you can write them on some paper and take a photo and attach. Either way, I don't mind. So the way it's split up, there is questions on bar graphs first, then there is some questions on line graphs later. So if you hang about, I'm going to go through examples of how to actually do the bar graphs and the line graphs specifically, but I'll just very quickly go through this. So the most important thing to look out for as you're going through these is the scales. So looking up your y-axis here, so the one up and down the way, and seeing how many it is going up and down in, because that's really going to help you with this. I'm going to point out something in question 2. So this is what I meant by the coming to conclusions. It is asking you, so once you've done all your other questions, is this an all boys or an all girls school? So you have to look at this question. It's about sports. So you have to look at the favourite and least favourite sport, which I'll tell you just now because I'm being nice. The favourite is netball because it's the highest, and the least favourite is football. And you're supposed to say, does this mean it's a boys or a girls school? But this really is quite a horribly stereotypical question. So if you can explain why this is probably a bit stereotypical, you get bonus points for that. But that's kind of beside the math. That was just a wee one to point out to you. If we keep going down, question 3 you'll see is a horizontal bar graph, which again I'm going to go over examples of them in a wee minute. It then goes on to line graphs, and there's a slightly trickier one at the end which has got 2 lines on it, so that's your bit of your challenge for this one. You'll also notice at the end there's an optional task on pie charts. Now this is something we are going to cover much more when we get into class, but it's just a wee task here for you to do just for some extra practice. The main thing for this is it's actually just all about your fraction work really. So I'll show you very quickly. So we've got this pie chart here. You can see it's split up into 10 sections. So there's 10 sections going on the outside, and there's questions about how much each section is worth. So in this case it says how many tenths are in the green sector. So if I just do this one for you, we'll see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. So that is 5 tenths in the green section, which we can simplify down to call that a half if we divide the top and the bottom by 5. And it's just the same for the rest, and similarly for question 2 in that one. But this is a wee optional extra task. Finally at the bottom there is some links. So this links you to some videos and some other websites that give you a wee bit more information, a wee bit of help, and also just a wee bit more practice if you're interested in doing a bit more. So for the third level stuff, pretty much the same, exact same idea. The only thing that's different is the scales are slightly trickier. So if we look at this one, it's going up in tens. Question 2, it's not actually continued the whole way up, so you need to figure out what the next load of numbers will be. There's similarly a horizontal bar graph, and then if we go into our line graph, you'll just see a little bit trickier. There's some more lines, some more points, they cross over a bit, so just a bit more thinking. And if we get to the end of this, there are some 4th level questions. So this is taken from 4th level and even a National 5 textbook. You'll see there are more bars in the bar graphs and just slightly trickier questions for the line graphs. But that's your extension, that's your real bit of challenge for those of you who are wanting a bit of a test. And again, optional pie chart task there, which again is pretty much all just fraction work. I'm not going to explain 1 and 2 because they're the same as the page before. Question 3 is slightly trickier because it's talking about degrees. So getting the idea that there's 360 degrees in a circle and using that for your fractions. So for example, for steak, it's saying it's 60 degrees. So it's actually 60 degrees out of 360. So we can write that as a fraction, which you can obviously simplify down to 6 over 36, and again down to 3 over 23. So always simplifying it down, and that's getting it down to its lowest fraction. So that's just a slightly different version, just talking about the degrees, but same principle. And again, some links at the bottom for some help. So that's your task there. It should be pretty straightforward today. It's just working through lots of examples on this. So if you think you understand that, you can go ahead and get going. I'm now going to go through some examples of each of the type of thing you'd expect it to do. So I'm going to start here with bar graphs. You can see that I have a graph here about the nicest fruit. So what's happened is there has been a survey of people, which basically means a load of people have just been asked about their favourite fruit. In this case, you will see that there has been 40 people asked, which actually links on to a question later, because 40 is the highest number of people on the side of my graph, so on that y-axis there. So we have our fruits across the bottom, we have the number of people who said that as an answer up the y-axis. So we look at our questions. Question 1 says, how many people have their favourite fruit as orange? So what we have to do for that is we have to firstly find where orange is on our y-axis, and we are going to have to look up that bar until we get to the top of it, and then look to the left to see where that goes onto our y-axis. And in this case, you'll see that 30 people have orange as their favourite fruit. Similarly for the next one, it's saying banana, so we're going to find where banana is on our x-axis. We're going to draw right up that bar till we get to the top, and then we're going to go along to the side, and you'll find it is at 10. Now your graphs will have lines behind it, so it's going to be much easier to read along than my blank graph, which will help you quite a lot. So you'll notice with your bar graph, your first questions are usually always like this. It will just ask you to say basically how big is one of the bars based on whatever the question's asking. Question 2, what is our most popular fruit? So basically what this is saying to us is what is the highest line, which you can tell pretty easily on this one. The highest line is this big one here, which is going all the way up to 40. You can see it's nice and clearly higher than the rest. And this is for the fruit blueberry. So this is telling us that blueberry is our most popular fruit because it is the highest line. Now you will quite often get a question like this, what's the most or least popular? So it's just looking for the highest line or the lowest line. If this said what is our least popular fruit, our answer would be grape because it is the lowest line up here. And finally, how many people were surveyed? I've already kind of said this. Your answer is going to be 40 because 40 is the highest number of people on your y-axis. Right, and you'll see just below it, I've told you already there was going to be something that is a horizontal graph, which I've got an example of here. So what you'll see is we've got here on the left is the graph I've just shown you above about nicest fruit, the exact same one. And then on the right, there is something that looks pretty similar, but it's side on, and it literally is, the only difference between them is it is side on. They are the same thing, they show the same information. If I look at some of my fruit, if I look at my apple is still at 35, my blueberry is still at 40, my orange is still at 30, and so on. So it is the exact same, the only difference is it's side on, but the information doesn't change, the way you read it doesn't change, it's just side on. That is the only difference with these kind of things. So then if we go on to look at the line graph, you'll see this line graph is about Josh's bike trip. So across the bottom is minutes, so it shows that he's going for a 120-minute cycle. And up the y-axis is how many miles from home he has gone. So if we look at the first question, how many miles from home is Josh after 40 minutes? Really similar to our bar graph. We're going to find what we want on our x-axis, so that's 40 minutes. We're going to look up until we get to the line, and we're going to look across and read the number. So in this case, it is 3 miles. Okay, second one, how many miles is he from home after 100 minutes? Same thing, we're going to find 100 minutes. We're going to draw up to the line, and we're going to look across to see how many miles. And we'll see that he has gone just 1 mile from home by 100 minutes. Okay, so very similar. Your first questions on line graphs are always following this kind of format. Question 2, what is the furthest distance Josh gets from home? So this is basically saying, what is the highest, oops, let's just jump to page. What is the highest point our line graph actually goes? So, I don't know why this keeps jumping from page to page. If I get my pen, if I look at it, you will see here, this is the highest point our line actually goes, which if we read along, is actually 4 miles along. So 4 miles is actually as far as he gets from his house, because everything after that, the line graph is actually going back down, so he's getting less further from his house. Final question, how far from home was Josh after 120 minutes? So same thing, find 120 minutes, find the dot and draw a line, and you'll see he is 0 miles from home. So what this actually tells us, if we were to make a conclusion from this, is that after 120 minutes, Josh is back home. He has started 0 miles from home because he was at his house. He travelled 4 miles away, and then he decided to come back home. So after 120 minutes, he is 0 miles from home because he has returned home. Final wee bit I'm going to go over. This is mainly for those of you doing the 3rd level and the extension stuff. Double bar graph, exact same as the bar graphs above. The only difference is we have this little box in the corner, which is a key telling us a little bit more about these extra bars that we now have. So you see each category has 2 bars instead of 1. So for soccer there is a yellow and there is a red bar. And this is just telling us boys and girls separately. So it's just giving us a wee bit more information about the people we surveyed. So for question 1, how many boys said soccer was their favourite sport? So first thing you have to do is look at the key and see what colour is boys, and you will see that it is red. And then we have to go to soccer. We have to look for that red bar. So we're going to look at this bar here. We're going to draw up and draw across to see where it goes, and you can tell that there is 3 students. So the main thing in this is looking at your key and making sure that you are getting the right line. Second question, how many girls in total took part? So what we have to do for this, again, look at our key and see what is girls. So girls is our yellow bar. And because it's saying how many in total, it means we need to take the number of all of our bars and add them together. So if we look at soccer, soccer has 6 girls. If we look at softball over here, that is going to go along to 2. And if we look at basketball and other, because they're actually at the same height, there is 1 for each of them, which if we add them all together tells us there is 10 girls in total. So you might get a question like that quite often. Final question, did more boys or girls take part in this survey? So we already know from question 2, 10 girls took part in this survey, so I'm just going to write that down here. And then what we need to do is we need to do the exact same as question 2, but for the boys. So in this case, we're looking at our red lines, which we'll see for soccer is 3, for softball is 2, for basketball is 5, and for other is 2, which if we add them together tells us there is 12 boys. So our answer to question 3 is going to be the boys, because there are more boys. There's 12 boys and there is only 10 girls. Right. And the final thing is a double line graph. So what you might find as you go on is actually that red line, instead of what it looks like in this, sometimes it might look a wee bit like this, in which it actually goes over the blue line, but for just now we'll deal with the ones that are just here. So, same skill, just 2 lines, and again, like our bar graph, there is a key to tell us the difference, which makes it just like our normal line graph, just making sure we're reading the right line. So, question 1, what is the average daily temperature on Wednesdays at low pressure? So we have to, first of all, find where Wednesday is, read up our graph, make sure we're looking at the right line, so it's talking about low pressure, so that's our blue line, and we're going to read along to our y-axis, which is 65 degrees, and in this case it's in Fahrenheit, so it's got an F after it. Question 2, how much warmer is it on Wednesday at high pressure? So we've already figured out at low pressures it's at 65, whereas at high pressure it's actually going to go all the way up here, which is at 75. So at high pressure it's 75, at low pressure it's 65, so So to find out how much warmer it is, all we have to do is a takeaway sum. So 75 minus 65 equals 10. Again, degrees Fahrenheit. And that is our last question. So that's just a wee quick example on how to do each of these skills. It is the same style question for every graph. So once you get the hang of it, it's the same pattern. The only difference is the graph might be talking about something different. Remember, your questions get slightly harder as they go on. You've got your tutorial on Wednesday where you can come and ask any questions, and there will be a quiz going out on Wednesday as well to test your knowledge on all of this stuff. So if you've got any questions, come to the tutorial and ask, or just drop a question in the Teams and I will be there to answer. So